Welcome everyone. We have connected system as a group July 2021. Taking in consideration that we managed to be running that since February. We've been on a really good roll so far. So a little bit about us, right? I just looked at this morning and noticed that now we are like more than 600 members, 625 to be precise, on the group. Not everyone is active, but we keep growing, and I can see like a lot of new faces. That was really good. Actually, if I look around, how many people is the first time?
My friends.
That is just awesome, right? You'll have how many people here is new this year? First time that is coming this year. Yeah. So a lot of new people. That is exactly what we're looking for. We've been working off the Global Integration Bootcamp, so doing a whole lot of things on the community. I'd like to do a quick shout out to the leadership team. Craig, which is probably downstairs waiting for more people to arrive.
Or eating pizza.
Or eating pizza. I was trying to be nice, man. Colin that couldn't join us today. Me, Wagner. Alessandro that was organizing all the logistics today, and Will, that is double take as also our presenter today. If you wanted to help us, there is a whole lot of ways to do that. You can volunteer for a talk, right? So ask us like what you wanted to see on the integration Azure space. Suggest some topics. Raise your hand to organize, or raise your hand to actually come and do a talk. It doesn't need to be like a 45 minutes, 1 hour talk. You can do like a 50-minute lightning talk before one of the main events. If you have enough people, you can actually do a whole day just with lightning talks, right? So feel free to if you have anything that you wanted to speak about, let us know. And we're more than happy to mentor you throughout the process, how to create presentations, how to do the speaking, do some dry runs with you. More than happy to do that.
Can I ask a favor?
Yes?
Could you go back one slide?
One slide? I can go back one slide. In 3. Want to take a photo?
No, it's okay.
I'll do it. Okay. You can follow us on at ACSUG and said if you wanted to get reminders about like the meetups that are coming if using Meetup or Twitter regularly. And since last year, we also have a channel, an ACSUG channel. We needed to get to 100 people at least to be able to properly name that. In the meantime, if you wanted to go there, you can go to bit.ly/ACSUG channel, and you're going to find all the presentations from, I think, since March 2021. With the exception of my one, last 2 months ago, because we forgot to record. But everything else is there. It's not going, might going to have trouble with that. Today's show, we're going to be talking about implementing CI/CD.
Wrong one. That's why.
Huh?
This one.
Much better. Let's see. There we go. So today's show is going to be implementing CI/CD for Azure Functions with Azure DevOps. Right? It's a long name, but it's a very interesting topic. And Will, there is a senior integration consultant at Datacom, and not?
No, I'm just an Azure integration consultant. But thanks for promoting me.
That's fine. Brad?
That counts, right?
That should be the right one.
That's your new title right now.
Sweet.
Good.
I'll talk to Brett about that.
Just tell him that we promoted you, and it's fine. It's more than deserved. And it's on record, so it's fine. Mm-hmm. And also the data platform MVP.
Yes.
Hopefully Azure MVP really soon as well.
We'll see.
Fingers crossed.
Depends how well this goes.
Right, the message brought to you by Microsoft, that is providing place. is providing the teams that we can record and providing the pizza. So thank you very much.
At the table.
And the table, yes. I didn't even remember. It's been a long time since you have like proper swag. Thank you, Microsoft. If you wanted to say thanks, go to @MicrosoftTech. So the tweet your dev experience, follow them there, and join the community on aka.ms/dev&z, right? If you join that, you're going to have a newsletter that every month or 2 months, they bring in you information about what's happening on the dev space in general. Legends. Like every time since Greg forgot his first one, we created the tradition to create some legends. The legends for today is, this is Will's second attempt to do that presentation. On the very first one, this is actually the one that we didn't record because I stepped in last minute because he totally lost his voice. He was amazingly bad. So hopefully his voice right now is going to be much better. He can do like a warm up or something. And with that, all yours, mate.
Awesome, thank you. My voice being better might not actually be a good thing. I guess we're going to find out. Yes, welcome everyone to those online and also in the room today. We're going to be talking about implementing CI/CD for Azure Functions with Azure DevOps. Just getting a feel around the room, how many of you are working with Azure Functions? Just hands up, don't need it. Oh, pretty much all of you. Sweet. How many of you are using Azure DevOps in any capacity? And yep, most of the room. How many of you are using Azure DevOps to deploy Azure Functions? And there are also some hands up in the room as well. Yeah, I've got to keep an eye out on the meeting as well for hands up as well. Yeah, so essentially today's talk is really how you can use Azure DevOps to implement CI/CD for Azure Functions. The way that I've done it are some principles I've picked up during work. I've applied to a personal project. I'm going to give a caveat right now saying that it's might not be best practice. So if you are sitting in the audience and you think, oh, you know, I've implemented what you've done in a slightly different way, feel free to stick up your hand. It's my first in-person talk since the Global Integration Bootcamp 2020, which is over 500 days ago. So it's really great to actually be speaking to human beings rather than a screen, which I think anyone who's been doing technical presentations or even listening to technical presentations, no offense to anyone on the Teams chat, but it is nice to see people in person. So I'm really grateful for that. Like Wagner said, my name is Will Velida. I'm an Azure integration consultant working for Datacom. I see a lot of Datacom faces in the crowd, which is great. Thanks, guys. But it was weird getting the theta person to give me the promotion. So that's kind of like a nice moment that we're all going to keep in the room, and it's on the recording. So that'll be interesting to see if my boss hears that. And I'm also a Microsoft Data Platform MVP. And one of the big kind of the driving force behind this talk is I'm getting old. I turned 30 this year on March the 5th. And on March the 5th, my right knee decided it would be a good time to start clicking. It started making this noise that I didn't know why it was making this noise, and it hasn't stopped. And I decided I need to figure out a way of looking after myself a bit better. So I wear a Fitbit device. And this tracks my exercise routine. It also tracks my sleep. I've also got the app as well, so I can log my food, see how much I'm eating, see if I'm eating too much pizza. And there is pizza outside. If you want to like get up and go and grab a pizza while we're talking about this, please do. How much I'm drinking as well, because you got to be honest with yourself. As you're getting older, I can't drink like I used to. Not that I drank too much for the recording. And also have a Fitbit weight. I went full in with the Fitbit devices. I've also got an Area device, which allows me to track my weight when this all gets collected via the Fitbit API. So I thought, well, why not apply that use case to a personal project? We've all got personal projects that we want to pick up, and we all don't have enough time to develop. But why don't I actually use that to try and kind of understand how I'm doing health-wise? So I decided to, essentially build a solution. So I've got various different microservices all over the place built on Azure Functions. Some of them will interact with the Fitbit API. Craig has got his hand up. Craig, what's up?
Solution come before or after you sync the last presentation?
Sorry, what?
Just to check your health. Was this before or after the last presentation?
So just for the benefit of the team's meeting, Craig asked, did I build this before or after I was sick? No, I started building this actually March the 6th was the first commit, I think. Well, we can check it on GitHub later, but that was the actual first commit. Anyway, so I've got a bunch of microservices that interact with the Fitbit API. In order to actually interact with Fitbit, I need a request access token. So I've got this service here that kind of saves the token in Azure Key Vault. And then I use other functions to retrieve that key from Azure Key Vault and then call the Fitbit API for several different measurements, such as my weight. I think I've got exercise metrics in there, food metrics. And then I send these as messages to Azure Service Bus, which then get triggered by another function, which then triggers another function which stores those records into Azure Cosmos DB. And then I'm starting to build out some APIs that actually interact with Azure Cosmos DB as a data store. So potentially in the future, I can start building some clients, maybe build a mobile app or build a website so I can actually view them and present it. And I've also got what the Fitbit, if you go into Fitbit, how many Fitbit users are there in the room by any chance? No one? Sweet. Okay. So essentially what you can do is you can retrieve your data via the web API that they have, but they've also got this feature. If you go into your portal, you can actually download historical data via CSV files. And at a time, you can download up to like a month's worth of data. So I was sitting on about 3 years worth of data. And I thought, well, why don't I just go through the process of manually downloading all these files, uploading them to Azure Blob Storage, and then I can have a function that takes content within Azure Blob Storage and essentially kind of like passes them into records that get sent to Azure Service Bus and then follows that pattern from Service Bus into Azure Cosmos DB rather than forcing and retrieving from the API for those backward dates. So for the tech stack that I chose, luckily I was kind of like, I had that advantage of going greenfield at the time. So, I wasn't dealing with any legacy code. So they're essentially Azure Functions built on .NET Core 3.1. I chose Azure Cosmos DB. I've got a lot of experience with it. If those of you have heard me talk before, I keep banging on about Azure Cosmos DB. Primarily, I'm using it for the flexible schema support. So I'll have this helper library that defines a bunch of common schemas that I'm using throughout all of these different microservices. And if I wanted to change that, I can do that real easily, just making an update to the package and then just updating all those various microservices and not having to worry about any schema constraints for my database. Azure Service Bus, I never really worked with it in anger before. So I just wanted an opportunity to use Azure Service Bus within a project. I didn't need a high amount of throughput. So using event hubs for the cost of it on my own personal subscription didn't really appeal to me. So I just thought, yeah, good chance to use some, use Azure Service Bus, use some queues, use some topics, depending on what I want to do. Then, of course, hence the reason for this talk, I'm using Azure DevOps for build and release. Again, showing you all today how we can use YAML pipelines to actually achieve that. I'm using GitHub to host my code. You can actually host your code on GitHub and then use actually link your GitHub account into DevOps to build and release, mainly to look good, just to get that nice kind of like green activity going in my GitHub account. And then for my infrastructure choices, I use Terraform. I put multi-cloud support there, but at the time it was either Terraform or ARM. And my personal opinion, not endorsed by Microsoft at all, I think Terraform is much better than ARM. But I do have a bicep deployment, which I'm going to show you. as part of my demo. And I really recommend that if you are using ARM templates, I really recommend you do look at looking at Bicep, because it is a much it's a huge improvement. Huge improvement. I'm actually trying to get Bicep, but yeah, we'll have a geeky chat about that later. Sweet. So when it comes to deploying our services, I've got a basic workflow which I'm going to show you through our demo. So for deploying our infrastructure, we have to, for basic, for just kind of like a basic outlining of how we're deploying our Terraform. Essentially, you've got to create your Terraform state file. So you've got basically like a snapshot every time you make changes to your infrastructure as code. You've got a snapshot of what needs to be applied and what needs to be destroyed. Planning our Terraform deployment, so there'll be a plan stage in there. So essentially what that is when you run a Terraform plan, it will show you what will be created and what will be destroyed. And then I've got a manual intervention task that says, okay, please review the plan before applying it. So there's actually that manual intervention task, so you can actually view the plan and you can either reject or accept your or approve or stop your deployment process through that. And I'll show you how you can do that in both YAML and the release pipelines. And then finally deploying the infrastructure. So if you're happy with the plan, you just Terraform apply it, and sweet, you've got your function ready and raring to go. Then when it comes to actually deploying our code, deploying our Azure Function code, so we need to produce a build artifact. So we're actually building our Azure Function. I'm actually using, as part of my build, an internal NuGet package that I'm hosting on Azure Artifacts. That's really simple to include in your build process. As part of that, we want to run tests. We want to make sure that when we're writing unit tests, we can actually incorporate that as part of our build pipeline to produce a little bit of confidence that our code is well tested. I'm also going to show you how we can actually publish or generate and publish code coverage reports. Now, code coverage reports, or code coverage in general, I'll explain it as I'm doing it, but it's really just I think it's a really cool tool that we can use to actually inform our stakeholders, saying this is how, like, the coverage of our codes, that here are some classes that are covered quite well, here are some classes that aren't covered so well, and it's really a way of how we can actually kind of drive future development and future testing strategies in a very simple way. And then finally, deploying our function code. And throughout my architecture, I'm actually using Key Vault to protect secrets. So this is connection to Azure Service Bus, connection to Azure Cosmos DB, and also storing my Fitbit access tokens, so I can actually call the Fitbit API. And I'll show you how we can do that. And also this morning, I managed to get going within the YAML pipeline, kind of manual intervention step as well. So as we're deploying to various different environments, we can actually review. We actually do that as a way to control our deployments as we're pushing our code throughout various different environments, such as dev, test, UAT, or however you've set up your environments. Cool. So let's kick off into a demo. Are there any questions before? If you do have any questions, this is in-person event, and also online as well. So feel free to stick up your hand and ask away. David.
Why did you actually choose? I know it's a personal preference, but why did you choose Terraform over anything else?
I was using Terraform a lot at my previous job.
Okay.
So it was just a way to for me to sharpen my skills, I guess. Not flex. If I was using Bicep, I'd flex. That's a terrible joke. Don't laugh at that. I also was open to the idea of exploring our clouds. Just say that quietly for the recording. So I like the idea that that I'd have one skill set that could cover multiple clouds. And if you're working in an environment where you are using multiple clouds, Terraform is a fantastic solution. A fantastic tool so you have one tool and you can interact with different clouds.
So far in your own experience, could you suggest anything else?
If you're not exploring, if you're not using multiple clouds, I think Bicep is it's a bigger improvement over ARM templates. But those are the only two infrastructure as code tools that I really know of, really used. So Pulumi is not something I've explored. There's one beginning with A that escapes me. Ansible. Ansible, yeah, I haven't used Ansible.
Ansible only takes really control of that, the operating system layer, doesn't hit the fabric of the cloud level.
Yeah, I'm not a massive expert with infrastructure. I love it, infrastructure as code. I'm not a huge expert. The expert is sitting in the corner, but yeah. Yeah, I just used Terraform because I was loving it at the time. But yeah, no worries, no worries.
I think with Terraform, even though it is capable to deploy to multi-cloud, we're actually putting Microsoft solutions into a lot of cloud containers these days as well, which means that your Terraform is cross-cloud for hosting, but we're still putting Microsoft technology into those clouds.
The one, I've bashed ARM a little bit, so I will say, just to make sure I don't lose the MVP, the one benefit that ARM does have over Terraform, when you're setting it up within release pipelines, it's much more straightforward. So with Terraform in Azure, I've had to create a storage account in order to store my Terraform state file. Yeah, and it's just there's just a bit more setup required to get it going with Terraform compared to ARM, whereas it's just a simple task: do this and apply.
So there's a couple of other little bits and pieces, and that is that the ARM providers for Terraform, so Azure providers Terraform are often a little bit further behind. So if you need the latest shiny features, it may take a little while for those to make it to the Terraform provider. So, but as long as you're not using the bleeding edge.
Another advantage, now that I think about it, with Terraform, if you've provisioned resources manually, say you're just building up a POC, to bring them into Terraform state is a bit of a mission as well. With ARM templates, you can just essentially just export the ARM template within the portal if you wanted to and just run that. I did that for one project that I was working on. It took me about 5 minutes. But it is writing JSON, so you know that is the hill I'm going to die on. Okay, sweet. So let us start by not going here. So what I might do in another screen is just build up, or just go into the portal. So essentially what we have here is my YAML build file. So what I'll do is, can everyone see that? Can you not see that? Do you want me to?
Just in between.
Is it Control+ on Visual Studio Code? Hopefully it is.
One more.
One more?
Thanks.
Sweet, cool. If anyone on the Teams chat does have a question, can I view chat on this?
Yes, sorry. On his screen, no, I don't think you can.
You can tell it's been 500 days when I'm asking administrative questions during the presentation. If anyone does have a question online, just feel free to post in the chat, and Wagner or Dan will give me a shout. Okay, so here's one of my build files for one of my services. So we start off by defining a trigger. So we can kick off our builds either by pushing to a certain branch, or we could even push it onto a schedule. So here I've defined that we're just going to push this onto the main branch. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add another trigger there. So essentially what I've defined here is whenever I push up into a feature branch, we're going to kick off this build process. And I'll show you why I've done that in a bit. Then further down here on line 5, we've got some variables. So we can define variables within our YAML pipelines that we can use throughout our YAML build definition, build pipeline. Sorry. So I've got one for the build configuration, the VM image that I want to run my build on. So I've got a function app name. I've also got a post-prod function app name, which I'll say what I've got in a bit. My Azure subscription, working directory, and the project name. And then I've defined some stages. Now with multi-stage build pipelines with YAML, we can essentially define multiple stages that do various different things. So underneath the stages definition, I've got one for, got my mouse there. Got one for building my pipeline, building my function, sorry, deploying it, and then approving my post-prod deployment, and then my deploy to post-prod stage. You can tell that originally I just had a build and deploy, and I've added these two at around about 5:30 this morning. Oh. Yeah, just kind of that like last minute panic. Oh, how can I make my function, make my demo a little bit better? But first things first, I'm just going to show you this build pipeline. So within the build stage, so within this stage, I've given it a display name of build stage. And we're going to define jobs. And with this, we're defining the jobs that's going to make up or what this stage is trying to achieve. So here, so I've got my first step of restoring the project. So here I'm actually running this .NET Core CLI restore on both of my CS project files. So if I open up this, oh, if I actually open up the folder, that'd be cool. Apologies. Go back into there. Sweet. So this project directory here. No, go away. Thank you. Okay. So here will be my like working directory when I commit into Azure DevOps. So I'm essentially saying, okay, restore my project and then build my project in these two different tasks. Not now. For those CS proj files. So any files with the CS proj suffix will be built as part of this part of this pipeline. And then I've got this .NET Core task to actually run my unit tests. So I've got these unit tests in here. And as part of that, I'm collecting some code coverage. Now, here I've used a script to actually generate that code coverage report. But there is a supported task now for running the code coverage. And with that, you can actually determine how much coverage you want for your particular function to allow the build to succeed. So some companies will say, all right, we strive to have at least 80% code coverage within our projects. My opinion on code coverage is, as long as you're as long as you're testing the right, the most critical parts of your application, and your tests are meaningful, it doesn't really matter what percentage you get. Percentages can be a very arbitrary value. Some companies will say no, 80%, but as I'll show you what the report kind of looks like. I'll see how that you can actually write tests that just pass for the sake of it, and that's not great practice. So, but if you want to do it, if you want to say, hey, if your builds are going to fail because you haven't got 80% code coverage, entirely up to you. That's just my personal opinion. Then I've got a task here to actually publish that code coverage report, and this is just going to publish it into a report directory here, which we'll be able to view when in the Azure DevOps portal. Then we're going to publish our project using this publish .NET Core command, and then we're going to publish our artifact into a staging directory. So that's essentially our build process. And then I've defined another stage for deploying our function. Now, for the purposes of this demo, just pretend that this is a dev environment that I'm going to be deploying into. But essentially what the thing I want to point out here is, with these multiple stages, we can actually say that a certain stage will depend on another stage, and it will only kick off if that stage has been successful or not. So we can add some logic in there to actually drive how we're going to execute our stages within a certain job. A certain task, sorry. So provided our build succeeds, we're actually going to deploy our function to Azure. And within here, I've got steps that uses Azure Key Vault. So I've defined the Azure subscription where my Key Vault is. I've got the Key Vault name and what the secrets I want to download. We can actually specify the secrets that we want to download specifically for this build task, I've just said download everything just to make it simple. And then we're going to deploy our function. So I've used a Azure RM web app deployment task. There is an Azure function task, but for this one, I was doing some custom things because I wanted to remove some additional files. And I find that I couldn't do that at the time with the Azure Functions task. And here I'm just saying, OK, within this Azure subscription that I've defined earlier up in my variables, deploy a function app type. I've got the name in a variable at the top of my build pipeline. This is the package that I want to deploy. So I've got my artifact that I've dropped. It will be dropped in as a zip file. And then I've added all these settings here, which I'm going to add as part of my app deployment. Yeah.
The deploy stage, is it a Windows image that you're using?
For this one, yes, I am, because with Azure DevOps at the time, I think the free plan for DevOps, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, you are limited to Windows machines.
No, you can, as long as your org is set up for free plan, you can get both Linux and Windows page. But if you sign up for an org now,
okay,
you have to, there is a request process. But yeah, you get both. If you've got it already and you've got a free plan and you've got Windows hosted agents, you can use Linux or Windows.
Okay, cool. I just use Windows because I thought I was limited to Windows machines. Yeah, I should try Linux machines actually. That would be a lot. Yeah, yeah. Pardon? Just do it now. Yeah. Yeah, I wonder. I probably won't if you don't mind.
Depends on how many USB sticks have you burned this morning.
Do you have a USB stick that I can burn?
No, I don't.
Okay. I never understood that reference, by the way.
How many forward slashes versus backslashes? Take ages.
So, yeah. So once I've deployed to a certain environment, what I've done here is I've added another stage to approve post prod deployment. So imagine you've deployed your function to dev in your previous task, and now you want to push it up your environments. Obviously, depending on how many environments you've configured and how you're conducting your testing, I think it's always a good idea to have some manual intervention in place. So here, all it is literally is just, OK, wait for a validation for me to go into Azure DevOps and say, yep, everything looks good, sweet, go for it, deploy to the next environment. But you might, there might be situations where you are running your integration test. Say if you're running it in a UAT environment, you're running a integration test against that, or an integration environment. You want to do some testing. You want to make sure everything's OK. You might run that as part of your build pipeline. You might be doing some manual testing by yourself. You might be doing some UAT testing, whatever. This is just a way to actually kind of like stop the automatic flow. So we don't want to deploy to dev, everything's fine, automatically deployed to UAT or whatever. So what this manual intervention task is doing, OK, this is running on a like agentless job. And it will time out, I think that's 3 days off the top of my head in minutes. And essentially, I've got this manual validation task where I'll send a notification to my email account and basically just say post prod deployment ready for approval. And that will allow me to, will send me a link to go straight into the pipeline and say approve or stop this deployment. And if it times out, it will fail. So you can send this to multiple users. You can send this to email distribution groups. Perhaps you're working with a team and you're sharing a shared mailbox. It will send it to everyone on the team. It might notify the testers saying, hey, this is ready for testing. Go for it. And then they might be limited. You might limit it so only they can approve it. Yeah, so there's a bunch of things that you can do there. And then once that's approved, we're actually deploying to that post-prod environment pretty much the same way. Cool, so what I'm going to do now is I'm actually, before we deploy this, I'm going to go into my repos. So I wonder if I can actually do it on here. I don't think I can. OK. What I'll do is I'll actually I won't be able to do it here, I don't think, but what I want to show you guys is some branch policies that we can apply, which I can't. Yes, I can. Okay. So what I was hoping to show you is I've got my code hosted up on GitHub. But what we can do, if you're hosting it on repos, you can actually apply some branch policies on how you can actually manage and control your branches. So what we can do is if we're raising pull requests inside Azure DevOps, we can set a minimum number of reviewers for that. And this is something that we did at my last job, so we can set this to how many minimum number of reviewers required. We can reset when new changes are pushed, reset all approvals. We can check for linked work items, check for comment resolution. So essentially, when we raise pull requests, we can apply these controls to just ensure that what we're merging back into, say, develop or our main branches is of quality, and there's a bit of control over how we actually conduct our pull requests. So say if I had a feature branch here, I could apply a branch policy to say, okay, I need a minimum number of viewers. I need to make sure that this code has been pushed up for a particular work item. If I make a comment saying, hey, this is going to cause an exception further down the line, or this doesn't look right, when I make that comment, I can't merge it until those comments have been resolved. And when new changes are pushes, I can reset the amount of approvers. So someone might have approved the pull request, but then someone else might have picked it up saying, oh, hang on a second, have you thought about this, this, and this? This doesn't look right. Are you sure this test passed? Whatever. The developer goes away, they work on it, they push up new changes, and it resets so everyone can look at it from a fresh plate. So these are some kind of controls that we can put in for our pull request. We can also add some build validation. So with the feature branch, if I push to the feature branch and I've raised a pull request and I'm letting the build run in the background, if the build fails, I shouldn't be able to merge that back into my developer main branch. So we can add that control there by saying, hey, the build has to pass in order for the merge to occur. Let's see if I can add one there. So I've got my build pipelines. No, I can't. Never mind. Okay. Yeah. And we can also do some status checks. I haven't really worked with that too much. Never mind. And we can also automatically include reviewers. So say if you've got a group of developers and you've all got a team and you've set up a group on Azure DevOps or part of the team, you can automatically add them to pull requests. So rather than me, manually typing in each time, Bob, Claire, Mark, whatever, I've got them added in with a group. I can apply them to a branch policy. In my branch policy, I can say, okay, whenever I raise a pull request, make sure that for this particular repo on this particular branch, make sure that these reviews are notified. Cool. All right, so what I'm going to actually do now, I'm actually going to kick off this. So what I've done is I'm pushing up my API into my main branch, as you should always do. You should never branch off. And one laugh. That's a laugh key that I wanted. Okay. Adding a feature trigger. I'll make it 2. My GitHub history is going to look really, really weird. So once that's pushed up, that should kick off a build. And yes, I've done, if anyone's from the UK, and you can see that I've done like that. Here's one I built earlier. But essentially what I've got, so that's kicked off this build now. So essentially when the build stage starts, that will conduct all the build tasks that we've defined in our pipeline. We've also got our deploy stage, approve post-prod, and deploy to that post-prod environment. So what I'm going to do, rather than making you guys watch my builds, here's one I made earlier. It does. Well, it worked at 5:30 this morning. Definitely worked at 5:30 this morning. You know, when we all do that stuff. So as our builds run, we can actually track the status and how long each stage took using this UI. So here, you know, I've got my restore task that's managed to restore my project. I've built the project. I've run my unit tests. I've created my code coverage, managed to publish it, and I've managed to publish this artifact into the staging area. So what that code coverage report does, we can actually view that within Azure DevOps. And we get a report like this. So we can see how many classes were subjected to the code coverage report. We can see how many lines have been covered, uncovered. We see coverable lines. We get this percentage, so that is actually 80%. I have not cooked that. That's actually happened. Well, I won't show you the other microservices because they're something like 33% or 20%. But the important functionality works, and it works on my machine, so it's fine. But it works in my Azure, yeah. And here we can actually see, out of all the classes that can be covered, we can see how well they're covered. So here, my function codes for 100%. So that's pretty good. But then I've also got my startup class as well. Now, to get this going, if I go into my function code, just go into my tests. What I had to do is I had to install a particular package. So for my unit tests, I'm using XUnit. But what I had to do in order to get that code coverage was to install this NuGet coverlet.ms build. Oh, hang on, was it that one? Yeah, I think I had to install both of these, so the coverlet collector and the coverlet ms build packages in order to actually use the coverlet report generator as well.
Did you say XUnit?
Yes, XUnit.
Totally.
It's just a testing framework. So there's NUnit. I think XUnit's kind of like cross-platform. There's also unit test, Visual Studio Tools unit testing. Yeah, Java. It's just a testing unit testing framework. I used it a lot in my previous job. I'm using a lot of NUnit these days. Much of a muchness. But what I will show you, actually, within our function, you can actually exclude. Have I actually done it here? You can actually exclude some classes from code coverage. So if I just go it is a bit hack. Can't actually remember the syntax now. Oh well, that's cool. But essentially, you can actually exclude some classes using that package from your unit testing. So if I'm looking at my report here, in DevOps, I see startup hasn't got any unit tests at all. I could decide, does my startup really need unit tests? Not sure if that's a good decision or not, depending on what your startup's actually doing. But you can actually exclude certain classes from your code coverage report. So say if you have a bunch of models. Sorry, okay. Thought you said something. If you have a bunch of models or a bunch of DTOs, you can exclude those from tests if you really wanted to. So there are mechanisms for deciding what classes are going to be tested, which are not. How is my? Just going to go back to my. Any questions on running tests as part of the build pipeline? So this is actually now deploying into my. So this is deployed to my dev environment. So now we've got this approved prod deployment stage. So I've got the. I'll just open up my emails on the second screen. What that's done, it sent me an email saying, hey, it looks good so far. We just need you to come in and approve it. So if I just go back onto that screen there, you get a nice little email from Azure DevOps saying stage approved post deployment, or whatever you call your stage, is pending on manual validation. So here I can actually go into the review and manual validation. That will open up a link to my deployment pipeline. And here I can just click review and either reject or resume that as I want to. Looks good to me. I think the unit integration tests are all working. They're all passing, which is great. So I'm just going to click resume. So now what I can do, so that will deploy to this post-prod environment. So as that's about to kick off, it's just waiting. It's running already completed. Craig, yep.
Your artifact is being created. You're going to cover that all? Where it's going?
Yeah, so in an earlier stage, within my build stage, the artifact gets published to like a staging directory within the build agent. And then that essentially drops it off into like a building, like a staging environment on that build agent. And then using that same build agent, I'm picking up the zip file for my function and using that in my deploy stages.
So you're not actually using the artifacts repository?
No. So yeah, it's not. I'm not referencing it from the repository. That's a good point. That's an actual binary within the build agent that I'm deploying. There is actually a release. Yeah, I'll kick off an infrastructure release that is using the, thanks for that, is actually using the repository. I'll show you that later. And sweet, that should be all done. So that's gone ahead and deployed to my post-prod environment. And if I just refresh that, I won't refresh the function. If I go into my functions here, hopefully we should see 2 endpoints. Sweet. So there's my 2 endpoints in my post-prod environment. And also I've got it in my, why have I got an email? Not important. And I've also got it in my dev inverted commas environment. You can see that this is all production. Environments. I've just made a post-prod environment just for the sake of this demo, but there's my functions there in my post-prod, in my dev environment. So essentially, I know it's a nice happy path, which essentially just shows, hey, this is it from A to B. But using stages and using we can actually define explicit stages for our build process. So here I could add a stage for running integration tests, running my unit tests if I wanted to, like outside of my build process, whatever. But here we can actually use stages to define multiple parts, all within one file. And then that file, we can actually use source control to get a bit of history and see how, just kind of validate how our build pipeline has evolved over the commit lifecycle, if that makes sense. Yeah. Any questions on that? Any questions in the chat? While I take a break.
Main question that we haven't shared so far that was being answered is, where can I find the demo? I was going to say later on, otherwise to the wheel, but
yeah, I'm gonna do that selfish. What I can do actually, all of my code is hosted on GitHub. So yeah, this is not me doing selfless promotion, I promise. But I've got all of these microservices hosted on GitHub. So this is the function that I've been working with tonight. So you can see adding feature trigger. And then to configure that, if I go into my project settings, I can hook it up via GitHub Connections. And I can connect my GitHub account this way. I can also use personal access tokens as well to connect, to link up my source code from GitHub and then just use Azure DevOps. Just to preempt the question, I didn't use GitHub Actions because I'm not entirely sure how they work. And I'm hoping that Azure DevOps and GitHub stay distinct products because I have heard some rumors, but overall, yeah. As far as I know, even though they're both Microsoft, they are going to be distinct products. That's That's what I know.
Somebody has a big smile on the back.
Yeah.
Distinct product. I think
I saw a question on Twitter about it, actually.
Actions and GitHub pipelines, so GitHub Actions and Azure DevOps pipelines are very similar in behavior. Even the hosted agents are built using the same GitHub repo. You can go and look at it. There are differences, but techniques are the same.
Cool. Sweet. And then one thing that I do want to show. So service connections. So in order to deploy, you can also hook up your GitHub account through service connections as well. And I've also got a service connection for Azure. So in order to allow DevOps to actually deploy stuff to Azure, you'll need a service connection through there. So I can use this Azure Resource Manager and use the service principal managed identity to actually allow Azure DevOps to deploy resources to my Azure account.
One of the advantage of that is that you actually restrict where your particular project you can find kind of the sandbox. So when you're doing that, you basically give permission to a specific set of resource groups for you to deploy. Instead of just saying, hey, here is my subscription, do what you want, and then get like $5,000 at the end of the month.
Well, I was going to say there's another feature which is often not known about service connections, and that you can actually put approval gates on the service connection. So if you are concerned with specific security or environments, what you can do is you go into the service connection details, go to approvals and gates, and add a gate to say, I only want to allow people. If someone tries to deploy using the service connection, ask Will, like you did with that other manual gate. You can ask, and it will email Will, and he'll say, well, I didn't know you were deploying to my environment. I'm not happy with that. Plus, you can also put gates around things like, I will only allow it to deploy from main. So that prevents people going, I'm going to just use your service connection and deploy my own branch. You can put a whole bunch of stuff in there. So that's very much super awesomely useful, but not known unless you go to.
Or go and change the permissions on a database, like go period.
So lots of good stuff there.
Sweet.
Is that sort of part of the PIM lifecycle?
No, if you that will where you were in that service connection, you just got select the ellipsis and select gates and approvals and say add a gate. There's a whole list of different types of gates.
So similar to what we'll be doing on a pipeline, but actually doing that with the connection itself.
And you can also do it on environments. You can do it on variable groups, variables. There's a whole lot of places you can do it.
Cool.
It's all built baked into ADO. That's right.
Sweet. Cool. No. That was awesome. That was awesome. Just one thing for my function. So I have created them using Terraform. Now I haven't run my Terraform pipelines for a long time, so I'm using using release pipelines for them, and it's using a very old Azure Resource Manager provider. So that should be interesting. One thing that's important to note, the reason why that my function app can actually, within my build pipeline, interact with the Key Vault. When I provision my function via Terraform, I've actually added a system assigned identity to give the permissions for that function to get to. I've provided it with a certain amount of privileges on that Key Vault account, so it can get and list the secrets, so it can retrieve secrets and from Key Vault, so it can actually reference the secrets that it needs to as part of the function.
Is that part of the Terraform steps or out of sequence?
Sorry, what?
Is it a manual task to give the permissions to Key Vault, or is it in the Terraform script?
No, it's in the Terraform script. So this identity block here, I'm assigning it system assigned there. And then within my Key Vault access policy, what I've done is I've imported the Key Vault as a data module into the Terraform file, my main Terraform file here. And then I've just provided it with the secret permissions get and list using that ID as the object ID. And then I've also got my tenant ID as a variable as well.
Will it persist it in the state file by any chance?
Persist,
The main file doesn't persist the key vault variables.
not the key vault variables. No. Did you mean key vault variables? Yeah, it would.
Yep.
No. It would. Key vault variables won't be. It's not part here, so I'm not defining the key vault variables here. I'm just giving it the access. Yeah, to get to list.
The handle to the key vault artifact, not getting the keys, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
And the other thing to think about as well is the access policy. You now want to do that with RBAC. That was recently in GA. So.
Yeah, I need to review this because this is using 0.12 and Terraform went 1.0 like a month ago. Yeah, so I need to refactor the hell out of this Terraform code. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really
Well, if I can be a suck up for just a second, I was too busy learning Bicep. So there you go. there you go. Oh, I can feel people behind their screens just cringing, going, "Oh, this guy." Yeah. So who wants to see some pipelines potentially fail? Let's do that. Let's have some fun here. So, as I said, with my infrastructure one, I've got them defined as release pipelines rather than as my pipelines. Purely because with my infrastructure code, I didn't want to kick off the release pipeline every time I committed. So essentially, I have this mono repo for all of my Azure resources. This is also on GitHub as well, Velida Azure Engine, because we called it payments engine at my old job. So I just thought, hey, why not borrow that? I've got a bunch of modules that I've created for Terraform. If anyone's here, who here's had experience with Terraform? So I've just defined my own modules that I was going to reuse throughout various different microservices. Yeah, I haven't hosted them anywhere. They're just literally on this in this folder. Yeah, I haven't looked into that yet. I really should. Yes, this is my module registry. Is it called a registry or is it no? So if you're hosting your own Terraform modules, is it referred to as a registry or as a repository? I'm not.
I think it's a registry.
Okay.
I haven't done that, to be honest.
Because there's like the public Terraform registry.
Yeah,
it seems right.
The way we've done it, we have a shared library where we're sourcing it actually from the repo, not actually through repo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
You source your module, and you say the source for this module sits somewhere.
Okay, so is that like an internal repository? Yeah. Ah, cool. Oh, sweet. And anyone can contribute to that, or is it?
No, it's our internal.
Ah, okay. All right.
Yeah, I can show it.
Ah, cool. Yeah, that sounds awesome. But what I've also got here within this monolithic repository, I've also got some Bicep code as well. Yeah, absolute flex with my parameter files there. So what we'll do is we will kick off. I'll actually find that activity function that I was working with earlier. My health API activity structure. And before I create a release, I'll just go through the steps. So we can actually configure it within our release pipelines to automatically kick off on pushes. I haven't done that because every time I push to one repo, that's just going to kick off all the build pipelines. I haven't filtered it in a nice, elegant way yet. But within my task, or within my stage here, essentially I'm running these tasks again. So running on this agent, I'm copying my Terraform files into my staging directory, specifying a very old version of Terraform, initializing Terraform onto the build agent, validating it. So we can actually, before running our plan, we can actually validate our Terraform code. So literally the Terraform validate command will look inside a specified directory and just say, is this a valid Terraform code? So if you've got any syntax errors, it will fail at this stage. Unsupported versions? Okay. It works on this version, but if that's changed, I do apologize.
Oh, no, I'm saying you're choosing an unsupported Terraform version. Maybe we'll check that.
Yes, yes, maybe you should. Thank you. Sorry, for those on the call, Craig is just heckling me from the back, but that's fine. We're used to that. That's why we work at Datacom. Then we've got the Terraform plan stage, which will actually plan out saying, hey, this is what's going to be created, this is what's going to be destroyed, depending on how you've written your Terraform code. And then we've added that manual intervention stage here. So essentially, this will fire off an email to me. This is just the non-YAML version. This is the classic version or the UI version. And it's just saying, please verify the Terraform plan of what's going to be deployed before you actually deploy it.
Sorry, but that can still can still be done using the YAML version. Using that manual validation step.
Yeah.
Can use like apply the same.
Oh yeah. So
thing using
YAML, yeah.
Yep.
So with the classic releases, you can actually view each stage in YAML. So this is what it would look like within the YAML, or potentially what it could look like in the YAML pipeline. Yeah.
And is it using the same native resource? Because I actually didn't know that in YAML you can do manual validation. So I didn't know that there is a native task for manual validation.
It's named slightly differently. So I looked at it this morning, and I think it's named slightly differently, and I'm not sure if there's too much differences between the classic version and the old version. I think it.
Does it matter if it's Ubuntu image or a Windows agent?
These are like they run. These are like agentless tasks.
Yes, agentless.
So within the YAML pipeline, what I've done, if I just go into I've essentially said that this runs on the DevOps server. So this pool, it just shows that's like an agentless job. Whereas with these stages, I'm actually running them on that VM image, so on that Windows machine. Cool. So if I just go back into here, and then
Sorry, man.
Yo.
So just call out quickly, that plan file that gets generated is the representation of the design state.
yes,
Of what you want at the end of this execution. So it actually goes away and looks at your current implementation versus what you said you want. And the plan tells you what the deltas are, if any. And that's what you're going to need to review, right? Is what's going to be destroyed.
yeah,
It shouldn't be there, and what's going to be upgraded, removed, etc. as part of that build process, right?
yeah. And then once I've approved, then we just kick off the apply stage. So essentially, with this again, you have to initialize Terraform again on the agent, which using this, I found I couldn't just rely on the init that occurred before. So if anyone does have any experience with if they are using Terraform in anger, this is what I did to make it work. I had to initialize Terraform again on that build pipeline, and then I'm just running apply on that. What I might do is I'll just create that now.
Not hog the agent out.
That's the thing.
That's what Bitcoin ones do.
Yeah. I'll just create it now, see what happens. So that release has been created. It probably will fail on me, but what I will show you as a treat, or not, I will show you a very clunky way, well, I think a very clunky way, very accurate way. Craig is laughing because I was telling him about it, of actually using release pipelines to deploy Bicep. Now, at the time of building this pipeline, and hopefully Dan's going to say, hey, there's a supported task for it. There was no supported task for Azure DevOps, or in Azure DevOps for Bicep deployments. So what I've done is, for those of you who have used ARM, reluctant hands in the air, mine's one of them, there is an actual task there where you can actually define nicely of how you're going to deploy your ARM templates. With Bicep, what I've done is I've just used Azure command line commands to deploy my Bicep. So here, I've got my APIM, which I ran last month, so you didn't have to watch me do that because it took me a very long time I think it actually timed out. I think with using Bicep, yeah. What? Yeah, it takes a while. I think it actually timed out because, am I right in saying that if you're on the free plan, build agents time out after an hour?
80 years. Well, no.
Okay.
There is a timeout limit. I don't know what it is off the top of my head.
Because after an hour, it gave up. So if I actually go into the pipelines,
Development issues, by any chance?
probably.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So if you just pay for stuff, it will happen.
Not paying for stuff. Okay, all right. So this is back in my API activity. So yeah, I can actually now resume or reject this. So if I want to go into the logs, that's what I want to do. So if I go into my agent job, I can actually view the plan here. Some in other places that I've worked at, there's no changes, obviously, because I haven't made any changes to the infrastructure. Some places where I've worked to, they've actually uploaded the plan to a storage account, and you can actually download it that way if you wanted to do that. Here, I'm just using the logs of the build agent to do that for me. Yeah, depending on your requirements, you can do that. But what that's done is that's actually sent me another email up here for manual intervention as well. So I can apply that control. So I can actually now go into this pipeline and say, here's my plan. What's going to happen? Does it look good? I can just go in and apply it. That will probably won't take too long, but I won't make you guys watch it. Anyway, back to my bicep tasks. So what I have done here, if I go edit into the pipeline, not the release. So here I'm copying my bicep files into my default working directory. I'm building my bicep code. So here I've just got very simple bicep file defining my APIM resource. And here are my parameters files, well, parameter file here as well, define what I'm going to call it, where I'm going to provision it, what the publisher name is, and what my email is. And then I've got another command line task to actually create my group deployment. And then, yeah, we'll create the group if it's not created, and then deploy my bicep code using the bicep template, and then also defining the parameters. And what I've also got here is I'm using variable groups. I'm defining my pipeline variables, so I can use throughout my pipeline as well. And what I haven't done is created variable groups, so we can create variable groups that if we're sharing similar variables across multiple different pipelines, we can actually save them as variable groups and then import them into our release pipelines for our various different services and applications. So say if you've got a common set of variables across your dev, UAT and production environments, you can define them as variable groups and then just import them in rather than defining pipeline variables every single time. What I'll do is I will create that. I just go back into my releases. So I think my infrastructure one, yeah, so that was successful. That's just succeeded now. Took 49 seconds because I didn't really release anything. And then hopefully my bicep one will succeed as well. It definitely succeeded before, so hopefully it should succeed again. And just looking at time, we've got roughly 15 minutes left. So that's, I think I'll just go back to the slides because I do have one more thing to talk about. So that's really that's the end of the demos. Hopefully you understand how you can move, what you guys can take away, how you can actually use YAML pipelines to define your build processes, to define your release process as well, adding some manual intervention tasks so you can actually control the flow of your releases. Sorry, do you have any questions before I wrap up?
Akshay is asking, which one do you prefer from the pipeline ratio point of view, classic visual platform pipeline or YAML? And what is your preference?
The classic, well, the stereotypical senior answer is it depends. I like defining it by YAML. I'm going to stick my head out and say I actually like YAML. I don't understand why YAML receives so much hate. It's really simple, really straightforward to actually construct your build pipeline all within one file. And what I haven't mentioned is within Visual Studio Code, there are extensions to help you build your YAML pipeline. So if you're worried about indentation and format, stuff like that, Visual Studio Code has really intelligent extensions that can help you make sure that your YAML pipeline's in a good format. The reason why I opted for classic ones for Terraform or for my infrastructure pipelines, I guess I wanted something simple to start with, but I am looking to move or migrate to YAML pipelines, but I need to refactor the Terraform code to make it more up to date first before I do that.
It's comfortable, right?
Yeah, it is comfortable, and it does seem like it is back to front where they've like started with a UI experience and then gone to code. I prefer the code way of doing it.
When it's something that you're not used to doing, it's nice to just have these blocks that tell you where to fill in the details. Like, so just, yes, I'll take 2 of those things,
Yeah.
much copy paste and I'm done.
When I was doing my infrastructure release pipeline, it was really simple and straightforward to use the UI, because every time you mess up within your YAML pipeline, you got to push up code again, and it's just more of an arduous process. With UI, it seems more natural with the whole drop downs and stuff.
But also add, there is a for the YAML pipeline experience, there's a visual editor in Azure DevOps. But I think the key for YAML is the pipeline is code. So
Yeah.
the pipeline is code. Keep your anytime you allow the pipeline to be changed outside of the normal life cycle, you put yourself at risk of changes being made that could compromise the safety of the system. So it's generally very practice to use YAML.
And I saw places where you actually couldn't do for a couple of days because it was an actual large pipeline and it was broken for some reason, right? So what it means is you didn't have a way to roll back because it was classic, someone actually saved it, and you didn't have the ability to get like the actual history that much as well. Get to the point where it's too hard to find. Also, is the other thing is almost like only one person working on that, right? Because it is there on UI, even if you have some versions, but it's only one editing at one time.
Yeah.
The other thing that I saw a lot was like 2 people editing, last one won.
Yeah.
Instead of 2 people editing, goals have merge conflicts, then you can put both things there. So
Quite literally race conditions.
exactly. So that's another really good reason, especially if you're working with a big team, that is that you might have more than 1 people having to work on that, to go with code instead of just visual.
So release pipelines, there is no option. You can only go classic.
Yep.
And release pipelines, if you want specific triggers and various this. So if you want to trigger an activity to happen or a pipeline to trigger when, say, you push to a container registry, you have to do that with release pipelines. There's no triggers for other types of technology in classic YAML. And there's also some more complicated approval gates, things like ask for request approval from ServiceNow, do all sorts of stuff like that. So there is some scenarios that you have to use classic release pipelines.
Yeah. Sweet.
Patrick, just double checking that you get all of that. And if it's okay, you can open your mic if you want. No, just talking to the people here on the meetup.
You're also getting a bit of feedback as well.
Just extra reverb.
Yeah. I mean, I don't mind hearing you twice. I'm just.
I don't think the world can put up with 2 blockers.
Nah. All right. So before I go, this is a personal plea on behalf of the Organ Connected Systems User Group. Your empire needs you. Absolutely needs you. We are looking all the time for new speakers to come and present, because we want to see the community grow. We want more diverse voices. We want different types of formats, ranging from lightning talks, deep dives. If you're doing introduction talks, if you're new to Azure Integration environment technologies, I've been a new speaker. I spoke at my first conference 2 years ago. I spoke at Global Integration Bootcamp before getting involved. It was a great platform to learn. But essentially, we want to hear from you. So if you're working with any Azure integration technologies in any particular environment, if you're working with, say, if you're using Azure Functions to talk to on-premise systems, say if you're using Data Factory to orchestrate data from on-prem SQL Server into Azure SQL Server, if you're using AKS for whatever reason, you know, we'd love to come, we'd love to host you, we'd love to hear you speak. And we also want feedback on the meetup as well. So if you want to try different formats like lightning talks or maybe more hackathon type events, we'd love to get that feedback. So come and chat to us. We're all, I think, fairly approachable. I'm, you know, vague at the best of times, so, you know, good luck with that. But, you know, come and talk to us and we'll be more than happy to hook you up and get you speaking at a user group meeting sometime in the future. Sweet. So thanks for coming. Thanks for listening. Thanks for spending part of your evening to listen. If you have any questions, feel free to shout them out now. And there's my Twitter if you have any questions for after. Sweet. Cheers. And make sure you pick up a t-shirt and a book.
You've been dying to do this. Come on.
Have I what?
You've been dying to do this. What was it?
Please don't undress me on stage.
No, you get a shirt. You get a shirt. Your Oprah moment. Come on.
Oh, I'm not gonna. No, I'm not gonna. All right.
Who needs extra large, XXL, medium, extra large? You